What's good, people? Um, just wanted to share today's price action because it's been very clean, and for me, it's been my best session to date. I actually achieved something that I've been wanting to do since the beginning of my trading journey, which is to catch the move both ways and know exactly what's happening. And after 3 years or 3.5 years, I've just managed to do that, so I'm very happy. Um, so yeah, as always, I'll start with the higher time frame. I'm going to do a drop down analysis as I've done in previous videos, except now I've got more juice to give you on each step of that, just because I have a more holistic game plan. So coming into today's session, I noted that at the top of the range we had these three buy imbalances here. With them not being able to push, that's a sign of buyer exhaustion. So that was my first initial impression. Obviously, we're still bullish on the higher time frame. I think on the last video I went over it on the weekly. So yeah, still very bullish. But even in a bullish scenario, there's still buys and sells. So yeah, coming into today's session, main thing was these three imbalances at the top. So then I dropped down to the ATT, which we have here, and this was the push on Friday, I believe. Yeah, that's the big push on Friday, and then since then we've just been consolidating. This here is the open. So I'm coming in, I'm seeing this sort of consolidation range. I'm at the bottom of the range and the top of the range, and given that all those buyers are trapped, that's sort of at the top of a 4-hour range, and we've got signs of buyer exhaustion. That was sort of my prerequisite to think, okay, we might sell off here. So yeah, I'm at the bottom of the range, I'm at the top of the range. We came up and we swept it, and then at that point, you know, just because we've swept the highs doesn't mean you immediately jump in looking for sells. I waited for structure to form, and at that point I dropped down to the 40T, which is here. So these are the three 4-hour imbalances at the top, and then we've pushed through the top of the range. We've set a 40T delta held, sweep the high, take out the low that created the high, and then come back on the pullback and retest the base. So that's super clean already, and then at that point can drop down to the 10T or the 5T, whichever your preference is. I was initially looking at this on the 5T, and I was actually a little bit disconcerted because when I entered, the structure was a bit messy, and then I looked over to my 10T after my entry, and I'd seen that it had printed a 1 up, 1 down, which is my entry criteria for the manipulation delta held, where it sweeps out a high, takes out the low that created the high, and then comes back and sweeps that micro range. And then that's the manipulation delta held, the sweep of the highs being the manipulation, and then after that the 1 up, 1 down is your entry criteria. Or it's my entry criteria, and it's a fucking very good entry, very high risk reward. But again, it's the prerequisite of all the higher time frame context that we've just gone through. So hop in. I'm currently doing TP1 at 50 points, TP2 at 100 points, just because I'm working on entries and context and all of that sort of stuff. I'm focusing less on money and leaving stuff on the table, etc. for now. So I jumped in. Trade went nicely, real quick for London. Took my 50 points. Currently trading with 5 micros, so that's $300. And then with the manipulation delta held specifically, when you get this good of an entry, after that first initial push, you can just set to break even straight away. So basically immediately, even though it's already very high risk reward, it's risk free after that initial push, because it shouldn't come back. So took my initial profit. I sat through this, cognizant that we're against the trend and it might push higher, blah blah blah. Decided to leave my trade break even rather than moving it to partial profit because, again, you've got such a good entry, and with the higher time frame context, when you've got such a good entry, you should probably just leave it alone rather than like, oh, I'll set it to this high and then it gets wicked out and does this. So yeah, I was marking this up, looking for a potential turnaround. I realized it's going to do what it's going to do. I'm going to nip out for a walk, went to the bakery, got some bread, came back to a very nice surprise. It had dumped 270 points all the way down, which is nice. My TP was just at 100 points, so with my remaining 2 micros, I made $400 just from the runner, which is sweet. So yeah, I need to journal on that, obviously, and see whether adjustments need to be made. Well, actually, I have already done that. So what I was doing because I was thinking, obviously my rules for now is TP1, TP2, 50 points, 100 points. But as I get more experience, then that's going to become more dynamic and accurate. So as I shared on the last video, the area of interest for that sort of sell would be lowest buyer in the range, or in this case lowest untested buyer in the range, because I'm not sure if we continue down to test these guys again. But this, as far as I'm concerned, is untested, so wherever we come down to, straight to lowest buyer in the range. So for future reference, if I'd have put my TP down there, that would have been an additional 170 points on top of the 100 that I'd already sort of taken off the table. But that's all down to experience, so I've journaled that and I know that for the future. But then we have come down, and the reason I'm sharing this video is because, again, I've got the holistic system now, so I'm sharing that with you. As above, so below, as Sype likes to say. We've come down, we've tested the lowest buyers in the range, so that's a very strong area of interest on the 4 hour. So then I dropped down to I kept my eye on the 40T, and we've got a manipulation delta held forming here. Sweep of the low, take out the high that created the low, and then you're coming back for your free. We've swept the low of that range, and when it's coming down here, that's when you can drop down to your 10T for confirmations. Or it might have been the 5T in this case. It was the 5T. So I'll pop them side by side so you can take a gander. So this is where you're sort of looking for an entry, and I have them side by side. So whichever comes first, one up, one down on the 10T or the 5T after the sweep. This white line is the bottom of that range. We see a nice little structure starting to form, and then on the 5T again, first one up, one down, boom, in, and then within 1, 2, 3, 4 minutes it's hit 50 points, and then another 3-4 minutes it's hit 100 points, and kept on going. I don't know what the total was. $180 points. So yeah, the manipulation delta held, ridiculously strong setup, and with the new charts and the high time frame information and all that good stuff, this is how I've been catching these 100-point moves basically every day. It's just this manipulation delta held that tends to play out over and over again in alignment with the high time frame and whatnot. So yeah, that is it, top to bottom pretty much. Nice quick video. As always, if you have any questions, shoot me a message, tag me in the chat, and I'll answer what I can. Also, I've been spamming the fuck out my journal, so if you're in the order flow group and you want to see more of my marking up and all that stuff, go check that out. But yeah, other than that, hope you guys are all good. Peace and blessings.